Maggie Pieper, one of my favorite people on the planet. You have such a unique path with Untapped because you started out as a student actually of Untapped. I guess when it was just me, but then you became a mentor, and not only like a mentor, like a superstar mentor for a lot of our kids. So that's been really fun to watch your path. When I first met you, you were in 8th grade, and let's say you were a little defensive. Tell me about what middle school was like for you, because you were the opposite from a lot of our students we see who have the hyperactive and everybody notices them acting out. You were struggling a lot, but you weren't acting out.
Yes, in middle school I was definitely struggling a lot. I'm definitely more on the quiet side. I had teachers that didn't even know that I was in their class. Things like that. When we'd go to like those parent-teacher conferences, they'd be like, who are you? So yeah, I struggled a lot more on the social side of school. Like I said, very quiet. I had my group of like 2-3 friends that I'd talk to, and basically no one else. Because of that, I wouldn't ask for help when I needed help in class and on assignments and stuff, which definitely led to some struggles in class. I was very disorganized and very defensive. I didn't feel that I had to change anything. I thought what I was doing was working, and it was not. Luckily, you came along and were able to break down some of those walls.
And one of my favorite Maggie Pieper stories, or just stories in general of all time, it's like our first day together, and I see this super quiet, sweet young lady. I'm like, okay, let's open up your backpack and let's clean it out. And you were like, we're not doing that. I was like, well, that's the end of that, right? So it was a process. But now you're one of these people who is just a star across multiple arenas, and you ask for help. What was that path? How did you get over that hump?
I'd say definitely took support from you and now many other mentors that are in this program that are supporting kids the same way. A lot of just like, I don't want to ask for help, and then having conversations with you and being like, okay, well, you don't understand this, how are you going to figure it out? And I'd be like, I don't know. That just led to, okay, I guess I do have to get out of my comfort zone a little bit and start asking for help. It took a little bit of persuading them. It definitely took myself persuading myself to do that as well. I didn't want to, but the more that I did it, the more comfortable I became with it, and the less scary it seemed to go up and talk to a teacher, ask a simple question. It just became a lot more natural and comfortable, despite the fact that I don't like doing that.
None of us really do like doing it. There is a very common misconception amongst people who don't ask for help that some of us like asking for help. It's like we like admitting defeat. Besides just the self-talk of, I just need to do this, did you have any other tools that you used along the way that helped you overcome that hump to ask for help in front of class where you really didn't want to and it was embarrassing?
Well, I think tools that helped me, I had to first get out of my comfort zone just in general, start talking to other people. While you were my mentor, there were other people around at the time, and I'd have to go talk to them and talk to other people that I didn't really want to talk to.
And now they're friends, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Now they're friends. And just had to learn how to get myself out of my comfort zone and realize that, okay, well, I can talk to, let's say, Tyler. I didn't know Tyler at the time, Tyler Slade. Being able to just go up and talk to him, ask a question, and receive feedback that was not scary. I wasn't embarrassed talking to him. Being able to just have that experience first was super helpful, giving me confidence to go up and talk to a teacher, even though I realized it could be a different outcome. There's always the chance of embarrassment in school. It's all teenagers think about.
Yeah. And what you said is so important. Is it fair to say you had high levels of anxiety in middle school and high school?
Yes.
One of the things that we do as adults, if we have a child with anxiety or someone we care about has this social anxiety, we're trying to shield them from the anxiety because it's painful. One of the best interventions for social anxiety is exposure therapy, is doing the thing we're nervous about with some help. So I know we always role played it. Like, okay, I'm your math teacher. What are you going to say to me? I like that. I don't love that. And then we practice it. What else helped you with that social anxiety, especially with talking to teachers?
Well, the role playing helped a lot because it does give me that base of like, okay, this is what can happen versus just my own internal dialogue of like, oh, this is what they're going to say.
Which is always, it's never good, right?
So role playing definitely was one of the things that really helped get me out of that comfort zone and out of my head, and being able to go up and talk to teachers and ask questions. I personally am very stubborn.
I've heard.
But with that, if I set my mind on something and you and I would have that discussion and I'd set my mind on talking to teacher A or whatever about a question that I had on the homework assignment, then I would not stop. I'd set my mind on it, and as much as it made me uncomfortable, I'd be too stubborn to back off. and that my stubbornness has been very negative towards my growth, but it has also been very helpful in some ways.
I mean, our biggest challenge is usually our biggest gift, different ways to look at things. So yeah, so you overcame that, and let's keep talking about that stubbornness. It plays a very important role in your life. You took a very unique path. So we just live in a part of the country where it seems like most people go to college. It's just what they do. And you knew early on, you're like, that's just not me.
Yeah.
I remember you telling me that like 8th grade. You're like, I'm just not a college person. And I was like, yeah, she'll get there. But you weren't a college person, and you had the courage to say that, live that. So what did you do after high school? You could have gone to college. Your grades were very good. You could have gone to college. What did you decide to do instead?
Instead of going to college, I decided to go to Tanzania. I was very involved in special education at the time, so I found a job over there. I'm working in special education with kids basically from 1 year old to 18 years old. And I just lived in a hostel with a bunch of other travelers and went to work every day and had my own experiences over there.
One of the things I recommend, especially with ADHD, and I know this wasn't you, but anxiety can play into this as well, is taking a gap year. I was not ready for college. So I stepped foot on there. I was 18 years old. I probably had the maturity of a 14-year-old and just got rocked. And we see this over and over. But taking a purposeful gap here, like what you did, going to a part of the world that's very different from where we live. I noticed when you came back, you matured like 5 years within that year.
Significantly.
Yeah, you were probably exposed to a lot of things. What was the most rewarding and what was the most challenging part of that experience for you?
I'd say the most challenging experience was definitely adjusting to a whole new, not even culture, but basically throwing myself into adulthood right away. I just remember that first night I showed up at the hostel, everyone else was asleep, and I was just alone in a room like, oh, this is what I'm doing, okay.
And it's such a great example because this is coming from someone who struggled with anxiety in high school. And to have the fortitude to go to like the exact opposite part of the world on your own, that's a lot. And there's a reason we saw so much growth.
Yeah, it was definitely challenging at the beginning, but like everything, you just adjust. And I had to put myself in a role of being more mature, being more of an adult than I was used to previously. Yeah. Just graduated high school, 18 years old.
Yeah, but good for your parents for letting you stick to that. Obviously, it was a very challenging but safe situation.
Yeah.
It was vetted. It was safe, but it was challenging. But yeah, I can't even imagine how challenging that was. And there's obviously a reason you grew so much during that time you left.
Yeah, for sure.
What was rewarding about it?
Rewarding was definitely the work that I did over there. I worked at a education center and daycare center for kids with special needs from ages 1 to 18. I expected there to be a lot of differences in education for people with special needs over there, but I was caught off guard with how different it was. It was not a whole lot of education. It was a whole lot of just letting them do whatever and adults just yelling at them for not doing what they were supposed to be doing. So I got to actually help do some education pieces, help with language and just basic skills like washing their hands, learning how to accept no as an answer.
Which is very ironic coming from you.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, that's so rewarding. That's so cool.
Yeah.
Even at 19 years old, it was almost like you were training a lot of the people just because they didn't have access to the educational resources, training them how to be mentors, how to be teachers, how to be supportive education professionals.
Exactly. Because over there, it's a lot of negative feedback for those kids with special needs. Like, oh, they're doing something wrong, they're going to be punished. Being able to work with some of the other adults there and be like, hey, this is not the best way. Let's figure out some other ways we can do things and just see kids being able to learn and grow and not have to worry about just being punished for being different. That was super helpful. I had another woman working with me from Germany. She was an occupational therapist. So she and I were able to help in that aspect too and just help educate on some of the better ways to react to bad behavior from these kids, because a lot of kids act out and then once they get this negative behavior, especially younger ones, they're like, oh, I'm getting attention, and they're going to keep doing that.
This educational center, putting in some positive behavioral supports and things like that.
Yeah.
Came back here, you worked at Untapped for a little bit, mentoring kids, and you were just game changing for so many kids in our life. What did you do after that? Because you were considering college in some sense, but you still went the alternative path.
Yeah, so I ended up going into emergency medical services. I did go to a community college to do that. Community college was definitely a better route than the traditional 4-year college for me personally. I started as an EMT in 2020, I want to say.
Right in the heat when everything got crazy.
Yeah, during COVID.
You were thrown into this thing.
It sure was. Yeah, but I set my mind on that, and since I have gone up the ranks through that job, and I'm currently a paramedic, which is level higher than an EMT. Still doing that and enjoying it a lot.
That's awesome. What were those conversations like with your parents? College is kind of the American dream. It's what we all do.
Yeah.
What were those conversations like? I don't know if I'm going to do that.
Yeah, well, I'm very fortunate. I have two parents that are very willing to hear me out. They were receptive. I went about it as, I don't want to do college, but this is what I want to do. Not just, I don't want to do college.
That is a great piece of advice because I think so many times when I work with young people, they don't want to do college. They have something else in their head, but they're like, yeah, I'm just not going to do college. And their parents, of course, freak out.
Yeah. When
the answer is to do what you said. It's like, I don't want to do college necessarily, but here is what I'm thinking about, and laying out a path I think would be helpful for so many adults.
Yeah, it was definitely I think helpful for my parents because, as you said, if I were to go up to them and be like, hey, I'm not doing college, they'd have all that worry of what are you going to do? Like, do you have a plan? What's next if you're not going to do college? Then they're just worried about my well-being and what's going to happen from here on out. But going at it with a plan that I have something in my head that I want to do, I might not have the whole plan written out, ready to go, but I know what I want to do. I think that was helpful. And
so what took you down? Why did you want to do the EMT, paramedic, and maybe even firefighter route? What took you down that path?
So I have always been very interested in helping people. I want to help as many people as I can. That's why I got into this job. And when I was over in Africa, I lived with a bunch of nurses and I was exposed to a lot of medical stuff. I also saw a lot of interesting things happen over there that would fall under the emergency medical services here, like car accidents and stuff like that.
Got it.
That over there didn't really have the same response.
Just due to lack of resources? Yeah.
But I think being exposed to all that, it brought some sort of excitement to the medical field for me, and I was like, oh, this is super cool. This is a fun way to help people. And since then, I've been enjoying it. Has its ups and downs, but...
It seems like if you have a higher level of anxiety, that seems like a terrible job in my head, right? Because you're like the first person on the scene in a car accident or a potentially tragic situation. How did you navigate that?
Honestly, I think having that anxiety, as you said earlier, sometimes our biggest struggles can be our biggest benefits, or however you phrased it earlier. Having that anxiety my entire life, I've built up the skills to deal with it, whereas something like going to the grocery store stresses me out way more than it should.
That's so interesting. So you're still stressed out by the grocery store, but you'll be first on the scene to a car accident and just be calm and in control.
Yeah, I think that I've just built up those skills to deal with my anxiety my entire life, that I'm able to just throw myself into that mindset really quickly and stay calm in situations that might not be calm. I think it helps being that I am the professional on that scene. I know my job. I know what I'm supposed to be doing. That takes away some of the stress, but I still get stressed out by basic things.
How did you deal with, because you went from a student who couldn't even get the papers into a binder, just super disorganized. And then fast forward a couple years later, you are in EMT school, so you're taking community college courses. You are working here with students, and you have all these other things on your plate.
Yeah.
I mean, that just doesn't make sense in the short, 4 or 5 things, or 4 or 5 years. It doesn't really make sense. What would you attribute that huge growth in your executive function skills to?
Learning what executive function skills were was super helpful. I was 8th grade when I started here. I didn't really know what I was doing. I was too overwhelmed by everything. And you were able to help me work through that feeling of being overwhelmed to stay organized and not get back into that spot where I'm just super overwhelmed, so then things don't start piling up again. Just staying organized from the very beginning, recognizing that, if I do start to get a little overwhelmed, I can take a breath, I can take a step back, I can exercise.
There's 2 things that I remember, and correct me if I'm wrong. Exercise was a game changer for you in anxiety. Once we got you boxing, and then once we had some basic routines in your life, like here's an organizational routine, here's an exercise routine, that changed a lot just in a short amount of time. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, that's definitely fair to say. I had no routines prior to us developing routines for myself. I would just go to school, be stressed, go home, be stressed. Having set routines surrounding school life and then exercise was super, super beneficial.
And I guess my final question is, there's a lot of people in 8th grade Maggie's situation who just show up to school, are stressed, show up to school, stressed, like what you said. Where would you have them start? Because the world seems so big and overwhelming. Taking that first step is so hard. What advice would you give to yourself and others in that position? Where would you start?
I say start small. Choose something, whether it's school or whether it's home. Just choose one little thing that you want to develop a routine around. Say it's just starting your morning. You want to develop a routine of, hey, I'm going to wake up, I'm going to brush my teeth, I'm going to make toast, and then I'm going to go to school. Just having like a very basic routine that you do every day is super helpful, and then it helps you start building routines into other areas of your life. Just figuring out that way to start it, and then once you are in that, you're like, this is a routine, this makes sense, I can do this every day.
It's counterintuitive because you think it's going to make your life boring, but the opposite happens. When
Oh, yeah.
You're not running around crazy in the morning. You're actually like, okay, I started my day off calm, like I can build upon this.
Exactly, and then it will just lead to more routines in other areas, because you and I built routines around school, and then from that I was able to build routines for after school and in the morning, and just kind of plan out my entire day. That took a lot of anxiety off of me. There was not that, well, what's going to happen? I know what's going to happen.
And did it make your life boring?
It did not.
And then you have all this free time at the end of the night, but
Exactly.
you can do what you love.
Exactly.
Maggie, thank you so much for all you do for this world.
Thank you.
Super grateful for you.
I'm super grateful for you.